Hey, shout out to companies that are big supporters of dirt track racing. Petersen Plumbing has a history of competing and giving back. Hoker Trucking, on the racetrack or on the road, they deliver. And Petersen Insurance Company, Wheatland, Iowa, supporting local drivers and race fans. Dirt track racing in America. The heart of this country coming together.
But when somebody gets sick, everybody sticks together.
The heart of champions of today and tomorrow. Wrenches in their hands. Friends and strangers under the hood.
You've got what's in this garage and what was in a storage area. That's what we had left after this fire. So, and this is one of the things we still had. So I said, let's do it. You want it, you got it.
You don't get much more American than this. Dirt track racing in America. This is an American Drive special. The heart of the story with Gary Metivier. There's something really special about dirt track racing. The smell of the dirt, the sounds of the engines roaring, the stands filled up with crowds cheering on their favorite driver. But there's a bigger part of all this. It's a sense of community that I never knew existed until I heard about a guy that was struggling with cancer who wanted to drive again for his son. And a community was coming together to make that happen. It's a story I just had to check out for myself. And this is what we found.
Got to the top.
Wild on the racetrack.
You can be enemies on the racetrack, but when somebody gets sick, everybody sticks together.
I can just respect the fact that he wants to go out and do what he wants to do, and I want to be there to help him do it.
What's the perfect ending here?
Well, we've raced our entire lives. I grew up riding three-wheelers as a kid, and then about 10 years old, started getting interested in racing. And a friend of mine, TJ Timmerman, started racing dirt bikes. So we went to watch, and he couldn't shift or use a clutch, so I got to ride his bike. And from there on, it was just forever.
Like most racers, one challenge often leads to another.
Well, you went from 2 wheels to 4. What was that transition like?
Well, I thought it would be real easy because you couldn't fall over, but turns out it's a little tougher than it looked. But
you can do worse than fall over.
You can do worse than fall over, yeah.
But after racking up a string of feature wins, about 50 to date, he was about to experience a fall of sorts that would change his life. A slick spot by a small stream in Bluegrass, Iowa, changed everything.
We had an aluminum drive shaft and they made us take it out. So we put the steel drive shaft in and it didn't have the clearance in the yoke. And I was kind of babysitting it, thought I could handle it and come up through the car. And went through my arm, spun my arm on a couple of times and spun right up into my chin and my chest. And it was about 7 surgeries over 5 days and 21 days in intensive care and things like that. But we got through it.
Working on his car, and we got a phone call that Doug was in an accident. And we jumped in the truck and we literally beat Doug to the hospital. And when they brought him in, it was just, it was wild. It was wild. He got back into it, healed up, and it's just one of those things where you look at him, you're like, that's the guy. That's the guy right there.
But after months of recovery, that guy was just not the same. He would never be the same. So after a few more races, he put the brakes on a career he loved. But you know what they say about racers? After nearly 2 decades, Doug is not done yet.
What's getting you back in now?
My older boys are 28 and 27 right now, and I got a 4.5-year-old. And my son Aaron, who's 27, says, we're out golfing one day, and he says, you know what really sucks? He says, me and Ryan are in all these checkered flag picks, and Caleb will never be in one. And I'm telling you, it just lit that fire. And I had no inkling. I didn't even want to drive. For 19 years, I like race cars, I like going to races, but I thought, nothing.
And there is another driving force, one that he admits his skills on the track can't outmaneuver.
You're in another battle. Do you mind telling us about that?
Not a bit. About a little over 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with, actually I went to a doctor and they told me I had testicular cancer, but my PSA levels were real high. And it turned out I had prostate cancer. So we did 17 weeks worth of chemo and radiation. And that was probably the toughest battle of my life, but we're still standing here, so.
So you determined to beat that too?
I don't know if nobody ever beats cancer.
Determined to drive, he reached out to a boyhood friend and motocross competitor, and things kicked into gear.
4 or 5 times throughout this process, it just didn't look like it was going to happen. And bringing Junior on board has just been, I can't even tell you what that has happened there. I mean, I've known the guy since I've been 14 years old, and it is just uncanny how many things we have in common and how much we're alike, and I guess you call it chemistry. But he brings an awful lot to the table, I can tell you that.
Junior, a soft-spoken master of the craft both on the track and in the shop. national champion who knows what it's like to compete and win.
Been building motors for over 20 years now.
What is it about racing that sort of gets in the blood? I see when people talk about racing, they're really passionate about it. What is it?
You know, I've took to it at a young age. Once you start it, you know, the adrenaline and just the process of becoming good at what you do or trying to become good at what you do. So we never really had this bond that we've kind of formed here in the last few months. He came to me 3 or 4 months ago, and he was going through cancer, and came to me with the idea of helping him out with suspension. The idea of building his motors, nothing like, it was started off as me helping him with his shocks, and that's how it started, and it's just completely turned into a completely different deal. You know, now I'm building his motor, I'm building shocks, it's just really gone a lot farther than that.
And you were able to pull a lot of people together, so you have even competitors are now coming together.
Well, I had no idea that so many people in my industry, meaning the motocross industry, were so involved in stock car racing, and some of those guys have really gotten behind me that I had no idea they were involved in that area, and it's been cool to see everybody step up and help and really to get him back out there on the track.
His competitors now teammates with a common goal.
You can be competitors on the track, you can be enemies on the racetrack, but when somebody gets sick, everybody sticks together.
What do you think of this, everyone coming together for Doug?
It's emotional. It really is. No. But we're doing it for him. I don't want to sound like a baby, but that's why we're here.
We wait on a closed track that friends arranged just for Doug.
In a car on a track for the first time in almost 20 years. What do you think about that?
I'm glad I'm here. I want to be here for it. I wish we wasn't doing this kind of secretly so he could come up by himself, because there's probably a lot of people that'd like to be here right now.
But on this day, until he runs for the first time here, only the team necessary to get the test run in, and his youngest son, his little boy, will watch his father drive.
This is what he wants to do. This is his last goal in life, is to go out this way.
And how does it make you feel to be able to help him get that goal?
I'm here for him. I'm proud. My whole family is.
As we shoot a couple of other cars in test runs, word comes in. Doug's car is having problems. The scramble is on for mechanics and parts. Can they make it all happen? And then, a couple of hours later, the truck and trailer arrive. 19 years of waiting comes down to this.
How you feeling? Ready to go, buddy. Ready to go. It's been a long 3 days, man. Right up till just now.
You got any room for a passenger?
I'll give you a ride.
That you'd hold off for a lap or two before
That's just not how I roll. It's just not how I roll.
Huh?
And then the moment so many have worked for.
What do you think?
What's the perfect ending here?
It's already happened. It's already happened, but we'll make sure we get the rest of it too.
Of course, his race for the checkered flag, which is way up here, did not come easy. We'll have more on his story in a minute. But you know, I was at the track covering that story when I met another guy. He was there with his daughter. She was proudly dressed in her racing gear. They told me about her dreams of not only finishing high school and being a racer, but doing this full-time someday. We take you now to her story.
normally travel about 5,000 miles a summer, just her and I in the truck.
This is father-daughter bonding on a whole new level.
Stepping out of this world and moving into teenage world is so much different.
The Evans racing team is ready to run. In a typical week this summer, 3 to 4 nights of racing, living on the road, living their dream.
I grew up, my uncle in Sikeston, Missouri, my hometown. He raced, and just at 6 months old, I started going with the family, and we moved to Iowa when I was 5, but from the time I was 6 months till I was 5, every Saturday night was spent at the racetrack. So, and then I got involved in different areas of motorsports as I got older, and so my whole life.
So how long has your daughter been in the sport?
She's 16 now, so I started taking her to be a spectator and be a part of a pit crew when she was probably about 6 or 7.
But pit crew was not going to be enough. Soon she was driving. Where did the idea come from that maybe she could be out in one of these cars with all these guys that have been doing this for a long time?
Well, it's kind of a messed up story. At 10, she had a real bad go-kart wreck and broke her back. And she was terrified of racing the go-kart again. We tried it, and it wasn't there. But since she was a little girl, this was her goal. There's a local driver named Ray Gus Jr. who's in the Hall of Fame, and she grew up idolizing Ray. So at 12, there was a modified class for kids. So we bought that in a truck and trailer, and we were driving from Clinton, Iowa to St. Louis, Missouri every week for her to race in that series. And we didn't have fun. So at 13, we said, well, we'll try a late model.
And tonight, like every night, she is the driver and he is the support team. So I don't even know if you've done this yet or not, but have you ever said to someone, I'm a race car driver?
I have done that before, yes, a few times.
What was their reaction?
Usually because I'm so young and I'm a girl, it's usually like, well, slow cars, right? You know, like the 4-cylinders or even junior dragsters. And then I tell them, no, I drive a late model and it's about 500 horse, and their first reaction is, are you serious?
What is your dream?
My dream to do this, well, to move up to supers, which is like the full level that you can do in a car like this, and then to run a series full time and work on the car and just do this all the time, every day, and get paid for it.
Do you ever look around some of these older guys that have been doing this for a long time and they're looking at you like, what is she doing here?
Yeah, like Gary over there, he's been doing it for a long time, and he comes and says hi to us every once in a while, and he's a good guy. And then Ray Gus Jr., he retired a couple years ago, and sometimes they come up and, they try to give me some advice because I'm young, and they think that things I'm doing are a little off, which is great. I love it. And I think they're really cool, and I think racing against them gives me a lot more to base off of because they're so much better and so much more experienced than I am, and they teach me a lot.
Although Darren says about a third of the family income goes into this dream, on the road together they have formed a relationship that they simply can't put a price on. You spend a lot of time with your dad. I'm sure that probably gets annoying from time to time as well. What do you most like about that?
I think working on the car I like the most, just because he's been working on this his whole life, and I've been around it since I was little, but he just teaches me so much, like the little stuff, like, oh, like this is better to do it this way than this way, and just like engine stuff. Like I'm not very good with that, and he's very good with that. So I think just bonding in the garage and teaching me tire stuff and just little things, yeah.
Does he ever pull the dad card?
Yes, quite often actually.
He says, hey, now what, we discussed it, but now I'm the dad, so I'm making the call.
Yes, and a couple times I'll prove him wrong a little bit, and then he'll be like, well, I'm still the crew chief, I'm still the dad, so.
But make no mistake, on the track, Tegan is in full control.
And as she's trying to learn to drive, I'm learning to do this end of it. So I probably hold her back a little bit.
Do you worry as her dad about her safety out there?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Her first year in the late model, I got nauseous and I wouldn't watch the first couple laps. And there's actually times when I've said to her, hey, slow down a little bit, and she's like, well, I'm in a race car, so.
You notice Tegan has a maturity that you won't find in most teams. What is the best part of all this for you?
I think being an influencer, just because a lot of the times there'll be little girls that come up to me and they're like, oh, can I have your autograph? Can I have your autograph? And they'll talk to me about how, you know, nervous they are, scared they are to start racing in a go-kart or start racing in general, and how like watching me is a lot of fun, and they like watching a girl because there aren't very many, and I just think that's probably my favorite part.
It's one of the reasons her dad has a hard time talking about just how proud he is. You mentioned she's a good student. Tell me a little bit about her.
Oh, she's a phenomenal kid. I'll probably get a little choked up, but yeah, straight A's, doesn't get in any trouble. Says please and thank you, just real quiet. You know, when she was little and we needed a babysitter, no one ever objected because she's been a good kid, and yeah, she does what she's told and then some, and she's a very hard worker.
Where's the emotion come from? What is it about her that really touches your heart?
Just pride. Just as a person, as a kid, just couldn't be any more proud of her.
So, where do they go from here? And how far do both you and her want that dream to go?
Well, she wants to pursue it full time and be a traveling, you know, everyone thinks NASCAR, but Tegan doesn't really like NASCAR. She likes the dirt, she likes the late model world. You know, our goal has been this whole time that if I can financially and everything get you here, if someone can notice you and get you a ride, or maybe take a chance on you and get you here, that's kind of been our goal. And so, yeah, if she can do it full time, she's all for it, and I would love to see it. I mean, she's still going to go to college. That's not an option, because you have to have an education, you have to have a backup plan. You know, like I told her, if you break your back again, but you didn't go to college, well then what are you going to do? So you got to have an education.
So what do you think you're going to feel like when you hit that first checkered flag?
Very emotional. I'll probably be bawling in victory lane. But I think it'll be more emotional for him than for me, just because he is very competitive and wants it very, very badly, probably even more than I do. So it'll be very, very emotional.
And I kind of think you expect to get there someday.
Yes, very soon. We're very, very close.
Until then, this close-knit racing team will keep tooling and retooling, supporting each other, and racing after that dream.
I'm kind of living through him a little bit when I do this, because he never got the chance. I mean, he always drag raced, but he never did this. I know he's always kind of wanted to drive, even though he claims he doesn't, and he'd rather work on him. So it's, you know, to impress him and to view good in his eyes has always meant a lot to me.
So you're driving for him, and he's working for you.
Yes, yeah.
As the season wound down, they had some tough decisions to make. Just how far would they go with this whole racing thing? As winter set in, they started to think about what would happen next. But first, I want to tell you about Doug, the end of his story. Of course, it doesn't end, but it just transfers to the next season. We caught up with him as he talks about his future and the Father's Day that he will never forget. It's a story that has inspired thousands. The champion dirt track driver returning to a sport he loves after 2 decades away. Fighting in illness, but more determined than ever to have his youngest son see him drive and win. What's getting you back in now?
My older boys are 28 and 27 right now, and I got a 4.5-year-old. And my son Aaron, who's 27, says, we're out golfing one day, and he says, you know what really sucks? He says, me and Ryan are in all these checkered flag picks, and Caleb will never be in one. And I'm telling you, it just lit that fire. And I had no inkling. I didn't even want to drive. For 19 years, I mean, I like race cars, I like going to races, but I thought, nothing.
Then came the day after a community came together to help him build a car. He would finally take to the track for the first time in his comeback attempt. The track closed to all but close friends and family.
You can be competitors on the track, you can be enemies on the racetrack, but when somebody gets sick, everybody sticks together.
We wait on a closed track that friends arranged just for Doug. Then a moment they will never forget, as father and son celebrate with a fist bump.
What do you think?
Determined to win, to get the rest of it. But after years away, his skills, his car, and his team would be put to the test. The man who won dozens of features in the past would find the road back bumpier than ever. But he had a team, a community of racers, family, friends in his pit.
If it's one thing I can't express, the warm welcome back I keep saying, it just never stops. I mean, throughout the years of racing, we've made lots of friends and this and that, and we're making more and more as it goes. It's just never ending, you know.
Weeks after, and hours of work by so many, Doug is gearing up for Father's Day. Wouldn't it be the perfect gift for his son, who he dedicated his return to, and for his own dad, with him his entire career? Race day. The rain started coming down. The stands started filling up. But many began to wonder, would they race at all? But soon they would find out. The show was on.
Oh, it was insane. I mean, it was absolutely overwhelming and in a different way than what I thought it would be. Just seeing the whole thing come together and having the guys out there and the kids and the family and all that, it was great. It felt fantastic to be back in a race car, by the way, but yeah, it was great.
So many of his family and friends gathered to watch his comeback, but the rain just keeps coming. Conditions get worse by the hour. A few heats run, fighting through the mud and the rain. Then came Doug. Doug was driving again until his car, smoke billowing out, came to a sudden stop. The tow truck called in to help.
We broke a J-bar mount. And I'm going to say we broke a J-bar mount because somebody named Aaron didn't tighten a bolt. But yeah, the J-bar slid all the way to the bottom and the rear end moved over in the car and bent a shock and it started vibrating and grinding. And I don't play around with the vibrations too much anymore, so I just pulled it in.
Because taking chances with something like that nearly cost him his life years ago and pretty much ended his career. But a lot has changed since then. Life and his health battles have mellowed him, helping him appreciate and enjoy each moment now.
You know what's funny is 20 years ago I would have been throwing wrenches and PO'd and everything else, but I haven't been that way at all this year. We broke several times. We've had our fair shake on bad turns out there racing as far as things not going well, and that doesn't go that way for me anymore. I enjoy it completely differently than I did 20 years ago.
Disappointed, but determined. More and more chances came and went.
My goal was to go out and win a race for my little guy, put him in a checkered flag pick.
But soon he realized there was so much more. Doug was learning too about his goals, not just for the little guy who hadn't seen him drive, but for his older sons and his dad, who came together to make it happen. As the season came to a close, reality set in. He may not get that checkered flag after all, but a different kind of victory lie ahead. A phone call.
And perhaps an unexpected highlight for you on this season when you got the phone call about the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yep. I can tell you that's something that I'd never even considered or would have even thought. And I would also told you it didn't mean nothing to me until they called me. Then it was a pretty big honor. It was really cool too. Just having that many people recognize you and things like that made it pretty special.
Well, I know it was emotional for you.
Yes, it was. Really hard for me to sit there, believe it or not.
As he sat there being inducted into the Hall of Fame, hearing about his racing career spanning decades,
welcome Doug Lunt to the 2019 Quad City Speedway Hall of Fame.
His turn came to speak.
Well, I won't keep you guys all night, but I'd like to thank my friends, my family, all of you guys, and especially all my sponsors for making this possible. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do it. I'd like to thank my dad.
And emotions took over. He stopped talking, walking into the stands, giving his award to his dad.
I guess, you sit back and you look at it, and we started off racing dirt bikes and everything else, and there was a couple times we went to go racing last year, and he's like, well, I don't want to go that far. Not that he's cranky, but once in a while he gets a little cranky. And I'm like, well, then don't go, and he's never missed a race from day one. So, we thought, that's pretty special. So when that award came, I figured he pretty much earned it as much as me or more. So that's why I walked up and handed it to him.
And now his legacy hangs on the wall. But he's not done yet in the car. His sponsors are coming back, only this time he is driven not just by his youngest son, but his entire family and racing community.
I started off doing this last year for my little guy, and I realized that my bigger kids enjoyed it just as much or more because they didn't get to be a part of it the way an adult would, you know. And once you get that bug in there, it's in there pretty good. So,
showing that winning is so much more than just getting that checkered flag. How cool is it to see a community and families like this come together through the tough times and celebrate the great times together too? What about Tegan? What is she going to do next? We caught up with her in the garage at home, trying to decide what the future holds for her. Dad Darren and daughter Tegan, teammates in the car and on the track. And here in their home garage. In a normal year, they would have settled in for the winter or focus on high school, social life, and classwork. But not so much this year. She's taking tougher classes than ever, trying to reach her dreams of being a full-time pro someday soon. But in these classes, she's getting lessons from the pros with bigger cars, bigger stakes, and bigger risk.
And as you start going to the next level, does that make you want to compete even more at that level?
Oh yeah, it definitely does, because I think I personally showed that I can hang with these guys even when we are moving up. So I think moving up more and more, I'll continue to just, it'll be nerve-wracking at first, but then it's all about competition, and I love competition. I'm a very competitive person, and so moving up, at first I struggle a little bit, but then I get used to it, and then we're right there, and so I really do like it.
And you're a car guy, so it's up to you now to give her the power under the hood to make these things happen. Is that challenging you as well?
Yeah. With super late model racing, you're racing against guys that do it for a living. So like Tegan was saying, the competition is much higher. So I need to be more focused on making sure the car's balanced for her, and just going off her feedback. If she says the car needs this or what she wants as a driver out of the car, you just got to stay more focused.
Wrinkling sheet metal, taking on the boys, wanting an even more powerful car to run. I had to ask Mom Melissa, who peeks her head in, to weigh in.
It makes me really nervous.
What makes you most nervous? Are you concerned about the fact that she'll want to do this forever, or that she'll get hurt?
That she'll get hurt, not caused by her, but someone else hitting her or wrecking the car.
When you watch her race, first off, do you watch her race? And what are you thinking when you're sitting there watching her in the car?
I watch everybody else more to make sure that nobody's going to hit her, but I want her to win.
Homecoming came. There was a race that weekend. A tough choice to make.
Tell me about homecoming this year.
Everyone thought it was a little strange that I chose to go to homecoming over racing, but I do it every year just because it's kind of like my one weekend where I get to just hang out with my friends and go do something fun that every high schooler gets to do. But I do ditch football games and I do ditch basketball games to go and race, which I don't mind at all. But it's just kind of like my 1 week to go and do whatever I want.
So it's kind of nice to get all pretty and put the dress on?
Yes, it's very weird. Very strange.
So at the end of the day, which do you prefer, the homecoming dress and the nails and the hair just right, or the jumpsuit here?
The jumpsuit, 100%. As soon as homecoming is over, I'm hair's up, sweatpants are on, nails are off. I prefer my suit, 100%.
And the story is just getting started. We are posting on various platforms. Find the full story, Teen Racer Shifts into High Gear, on the Heart of the Story with Gary Metivier podcast, available now. If those stories aren't inspiring enough, imagine a champion racing family who loses just about everything they have, but in the end find they have everything they need, and then some. years ago, but Kelly kept on going. It was at a racetrack that he won the heart of a woman who would change his life.
She said she seen me run across the track at Dubuque, so that's her story. I'll just go with that.
So it must have been a pretty good run. Must have looked good.
Yeah, I must have. Yep. Actually had Dad's old coupe up there that day.
Together, they teamed up to enjoy the sport they love and raise a family of racers with oil and rubber running through their veins. They ran wide open until an accident off the track stopped them in their tracks.
We had a home explosion and fire.
Surviving the shock of the explosion as fire engulfed their home, Kelly knew he had to get to his wife, Becky, who was in another part of the house. He would have to get through the flames to get to her. He says he did what he had to do.
My husband coming to my bedroom window to get me out of the house. He's my hero. He got me out. He saved my life. So, crawled out the window in my nightgown. That's all I had.
So he was severely burned.
Yes.
But yet he was there for you.
He got to me.
That kind of told you about your relationship in a nutshell.
Yeah, we're very close right now. I don't think you could tear us apart.
Burned over 40% of his body, his arms, back, and back of his head. More than 40 days in the hospital, months of follow-up, surgery after surgery, rehab, inpatient and out. He had his family, and although his house was gone, there was something left. The garage stood alone, not attached to the house. It survived. His prized race car safely inside.
How did that change you?
I don't know. I mean, it makes me appreciate my family and my friends much more. You realize what is truly important to you and what isn't. You know, it makes you want to give back. I can tell you that.
That chance to give back came sooner than expected. A phone call. Remember Chuck, his friend since high school? He was terminally ill.
When you found out that he was sick, and that's one of the reasons obviously he wants to ride again.
It was tough. He's always been kind of my hero, and when you find somebody like that in that situation with that diagnosis, that it's hard to take at first.
Chuck wanted to drive again.
So this car was sitting basically. The motor was out of it, training was out of it, and I always told them if they wanted to go racing, let me know. I'd put it together. So Friday night at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I get a call from Rhonda and a text from her and said, can you find a car for Chuck for tomorrow night? And I'm like, well, tomorrow night, but maybe next weekend. And she says, well, all of his kids and grandkids are up here, they want to see him racing. I said, well, you guys, you got any help? She said, I got 4 guys. I said to come over tonight.
Becky was all in too. No hesitation.
I started crying. He said he was leaving to help Chuck get a race car ready to go, and I said, you're not leaving me, I'm going with you. So I sat out here with his wife till 3 in the morning.
But they had lots of work to do in just a few hours to get it done. As a team of volunteers went to work. A long night of work, but the crew was revved up and raring to go.
And at 10 after 11, we rolled this out of the trailer with no motor and no tranny and no radiator and the wrong gear. And we worked on to about 3 in the morning and had the motor running. The next day we finished it up and took them to the track.
Ready to run. But come race time, instead of going all out at the start, something was happening. Becky had a surprise of her own up her sleeve.
I kind of went behind the scenes and asked the promoter to give Chuck a parade lap. Nobody knew it but me. And to watch him out there, I started crying when I seen him stop everybody. And Kelly didn't know what was going on either. He thought something broke. And they put him in the lead, and he did that parade lap, and it was amazing. I started crying, so cheered him on.
A highlight of your life, perhaps?
Yes, definitely one of them. Absolutely.
A lap for him, a salute, a tribute to a dear friend and fellow racer, a show of respect and friendship that over the next few weeks would just keep growing. Back on track together, race after race, as both men deal with new challenges.
I have terminal cancer. Actually, I had chemo yesterday. I have it every Thursday, trying to slow it down. The doctors are saying I probably won't make it through into next year. They give me about 6 months, and I'm here to prove them wrong.
Enjoying each lap, each race, each day.
The perfect ending is they find a miracle drug and he gets better. That's the perfect ending.
But if you can't get that, what's next?
I told him he can drive it all he wants. So you'll see us around the racetrack here from on out the rest of the year.
Kelly says he plans to be recovered enough to be back in the driver's seat himself someday soon.
You looking forward to seeing him race again? And
Yes. We're going to have to get him an air-cooled suit and helmet, so that's going to be quite expensive. So hopefully at one point we'll be able to do that and get him back out there next year. So.
But you are just as determined to see him race again.
Oh yes, I love it as much as he does. Our whole family has.
A family that lost so much but gained so much more than they ever expected. In a small garage that holds more heart than anyone driving by will ever know. All this talk, all this action probably makes you ready for some racing, or if you've never experienced dirt track racing, now may be the time to check it out for the first time. Soon, tracks like this all across this country will be full of action. Engines, motors all roaring, the dirt flying, the seats filled with screaming fans, all enjoying the common experience that is dirt track racing right here in America. This special American drive is just getting started. Tractor pulls with men and women behind the wheels to motorcycle races with classic collectors and much more. If you like the action and the emotion of this kind of sport, this way of life, this is where you'll find the heart of it all, both on YouTube and behind-the-scenes material in our podcast. Get straight to the heart with the heart of the story with Gary Metivier. Let's go.